Hey, what's up guys? What's going on? Welcome to the third section of our Dart tutorial, and this section is titled Add a static list of messages and simulate chat. So in this first video, we are going to create a JSON file for the messages. So what are we going to learn in this video? So first is how to add new asset files to the project. In this case, we will add two JSON files that will be the static list representing the messages. Then we will import those files to the pubspec YAML file and the contents of those files to the memory. Then we will also display the contents of the messages onto separate list of text widgets and display recent chats as well. And lastly, we will learn and use the future builder class to handle future values. So more on that later. Okay, so first and foremost, you may be asking what is a JSON file. So for those who know, maybe this is just a recap. Okay, so JSON, also known as a JavaScript object notation, is a text file that is formatted in a way that allows it to store data structure and objects. It does this by having tags for the data. So it's more like XML and even HTML or Markdown. Okay, so why JSON? We'll use these files for ease of use and to simplify the deserialization of data. Okay, so Flutter has a built-in deserialization function for JSON files. It's not as robust as what you can find in JavaScript, but it does the trick for our purpose. So this is useful for some static data, like in our example here. We will use it to contain static messages. However, JSON files are also used for internationalization, or I18N for short, of the project, meaning you will use it later when handling translations to different languages. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to add to the assets folder inside the root. Okay, and then we will add a new file inside the folder. Okay, so let's do that now. Let's switch to Visual Studio Code. So here, you will see the folder or the root folder. So you have to click here outside of the files and the folders and then click this icon here for new folder. Or you can also use the shortcut Shift A. Okay, so type in assets. Now that we have the folder, we will add the file and we will name it messagedetails.json. Okay, so here, so highlight the folder and either use the shortcut A or this icon here, or you can also use this one. Okay, Control N. But if you want to directly put the file into the folder, press A and then type the name messagedetails.json. Okay, so open the file in the IDE or your editor of choice and then type in some data in this format. So you can see that a JSON file consists of these curly braces as its main object, like the marker for the JSON file. And then you have your title here, the object's name, and then its value. So in this case, UID friend1 has a value is represented by an object that in turn inside it, you have more objects that represent or describe UID friend1. So UID is like a universally unique ID. For our use, it will be just some numbers, but later on, when we go to Firebase, we will be using the ID from Firebase itself. So it will not be hard to do. No, so you don't have to make your own UID format or something. So inside the object, you have the avatar, which is in turn evaluated to the URL of that string or the avatar. So you have the avatar and its value is the URL of the avatar itself. Then you have messages, which is an array of separate messages. Okay, so an array is denoted by this square brackets here. And then the third object is the display name so that we can display the friend's name. Okay, so next up, what does the message details.json file contain? So like from the previous slide and how I described it before, you have your UID, your avatar, messages, and then the display name. So as a reminder, JSON files are not really statically typed, meaning that you don't have to describe or put a descriptor for the data, okay, except for the use of the square brackets for arrays. You can also put true or false without the quotation marks. You can also put numbers. And for strings, you need to put quotes or quotation marks. And then curly braces for objects. Okay, we will find this useful later on when we incorporate the Firestore database, as it uses almost the same schema. If you want to do a pre-reading, you can look at either NoSQL databases or even go to the Firestore database itself. So let's add first, we jump into that slide over there. Let's go ahead and fill our JSON file. Okay, so that's number one. Let's put UID, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the object value. Okay, so avatar. Let's put some dummy data for now. Then messages, make it an object. And let's put type, content. Okay, what's up? Okay, and then let's say if from object, let's put a display name. So again, this is not the final sheet or schema, but this is just temporary so that we can just show how to use JSON files. Okay, so let's say your friend Thanos. So let me reformat the file or format the document and save it. Okay, so now we have a JSON file here for the messages. So this should be unique. Remember that. So we can also add another one or try. So you can see that Visual Studio Code automatically detects that there's a duplicate object. So you can add as many as you want. So, but for now, let's settle for one object, right? And then let's enclose the messages into an array. And let's add more messages here. So let's change something. Maybe let's put, did you see this picture yet? And then here, let's say he wants to show an image from a URL. And some dummy data again. Pick. Okay. So from friend. Then let's say that this fourth message is from the user. So let's ask him why. Right? So as you can see, even if I delete, or even if the messages object are not, in a particular format, meaning that this fourth object here doesn't have the display name object, it's still, that's because JSON files don't really have a specific format itself. Okay, so now let's add another file called RecentChat. So basically, more or less, the data inside is the same, So let's probably just duplicate this one, copy paste, and then just rename this F2 recent chats. Let's see. So we still have the avatar and then the UID. So the UID here should match the UID here. And you don't have to worry about that later on, but for now, let's worry about it. Okay. So avatar, last message, and display name. So now we're only putting one message, which is the last one. So if you see on most social media applications or chat applications like Facebook, you can see the last message when you browse chat heads or your friends list or the chat list. So let's remove the other messages here and then turn this into a single object. That's format the document. Display name again. Control down for Windows. automatically push the line down, save it. All right. So we have the time, a type, content, and timestamp. And let's add the from field too, so that we can show it to the user. So timestamp, I would suggest that we use the millis for the unit, so you don't have to worry about, different formatting. Although you can use an ISO 8601 string, but for now, let's just make it like a number. All right, so you see here, we have objects and the strings, but here we have a number for the value. All right. Okay, so for the recent chats, again, UID friend, universally ID, and then avatar, last message, and display name. Okay, and so timestamp, I'm using one, so timestamp, and then let's import the new file to pubspec YAML. So locate the pubspec.yaml file in the root directory. Okay, so let's add the assets, and to begin using them, you need to uncomment this section here, assets, and then add your file. Let's replace this one, assets dash message details. Okay, copy this one and type in recent chats. Okay, so make sure the capitalization correct, otherwise you will have errors. So, and then save this file, the pubspec file. Okay, so it will start getting, the packages and the assets too. So if you want to add fonts, you can add that here if you want a different font. So it just depends on your taste. It's just normal, like adding these assets here. So you also need to copy the font file here, maybe into your assets, put it in a separate font folder, and then add them here, just like how we did here. However, for fonts, you need to specify the size, the weight, not the size, the weight and the style, italics or underlined. And then you have the weights from 100 to 900, but make sure that the asset that you're loading conforms to the weight that you're putting here. Otherwise, your UI will look funny. So now that we're done, all right, so now we need to load the JSON file to memory, which is also known as deserialization. Or first, we'll need to load the file and then deserialize it, okay? So in Flutter, we have the function called default asset bundle, because now the file is in the asset folder or assets folder, and we need to use default asset bundle to load the file. So how do we do that? So let's say we're going to put that inside put it in the chat view first. So the chat view, let's put it here, down here. Let's make our separate function here. So let's make it void first for now. Load messages or message details. And then here, we need to use this function which has an await on the front, and then it will load it in the future. Let's just make string message details, string await default bundle dot off context dot load string. So if we use the load string function, it will automatically load it as a string. But you can see that there's this future here that we need to resolve. So let's type it. Okay, so on the key, we need to put the whole string as it is found in our pubspec YAML file. Copy that. So now we're having some errors here because the value returned by this load string is a future, and we are not, expecting a future here. We're expecting an instant string. And then we also have this error in the await because it needs to be async when you want to use await. Okay, so if you want to use async, you need to put it here. or type it here, okay, in between the parentheses and the curly brace. So for voids, there are no problems here for now, but later on, if you want to return a string, you will have an error here because what you are returning here is a future. So let's put void first, and I will explain to you what a future is in a while. Here, you'll see that Flutter is asynchronous in nature, and that means that it doesn't wait for processes to finish before it jumps to the next function or line, okay? And if you do have long calculations or computations or a delayed result, like an API call or HTTP query, then that may freeze the UI, and you don't really want to that, and you really don't want that to happen, okay? So that's where futures come in, all right? So later on, or let's jump into it now. So if you want to make a widget from a future object, so a future object represents a delayed computation or result, okay? So some computations may take longer time, and so you will use a future for that. Here, we will use a wait so that it will wait for the value returned from this one. If this one or your API call finishes, then it will return the value to this string now. So initially, this doesn't have any value, and if you don't have a value, it will be null, and more likely you will have errors if you have nulls in your value, okay? And then later on, you cannot distinguish when it has loaded or not. So this is where the future functions or keywords come in. So it will, when your function here finishes or resolves, then it will pass on the results to this await here, and then it will pass on the value to your variable here. It's a little bit complicated at first, but you will get used to it later on. Okay, so again, if you're using a futures object, you will need to use await, or you can also use the then method. Okay, like here, if you are, for example, if it's returning a string or a future, any type of future, you can put dot and then. So what the then keyword does is that it will be waiting until previous function fulfills or resolves, and then it will do what is placed here. Okay, so for example, if you want to print it, print say on value, $on value, $sign means it's an object or it's a keyword, not a regular string. Okay, so when this function here, this load string here resolves, fulfills, then it will pass the value to this method, and then this on value variable will be evaluated, and then it will print it here. Okay, so while this is being evaluated, this will not do anything. Okay, so for errors in here, catch error. Okay, so again, like that, you need to determine the value of this error here and then do whatever you need to catch that fault. Okay, and then you also have when complete as stream. Okay, you can also put a timeout so that users will not be waiting for a long time. Sometimes, you need to tell them that the service or the function timed out and that they need to retry. Okay, so that's practice for UI. Okay, so for now, let's just use the await keyword, right? And then print this message detail string. All right. So I suggest that if you're going to print for the console, make sure that you put some headers here so that you don't get confused. Okay. So let's run this one. F5. All right. So building and syncing. All right. So we got it. Okay. So since we didn't put this into our build, it didn't show up. Let's go ahead and let's put it here under the build. Okay. So save it and it will reload. All right. So when the chat view is opened, so it will print this So this is the contents of our message details file. Okay, so as of now, it's just a string. It's not yet in deserialized JSON mode. So what we need to do now, okay, is to deserialize. Let's go back here. So Flutter has a function to deserialize simple JSON files. So for more complex JSON files, you will have to use a different library or method. Okay, so we're not covering that here, and we will just cover the simple JSON file. So you will need to import Dart convert. Okay, so how do you import a module? Go to the top of the file. This is where you will use the function. So import Dart convert. Okay, or if you don't want to type in first, you can just use the function here, JSON.decode. So as you see here, it shows you an error because it's undefined. So control dot or alt dot for some configurations. Okay, so you can see here that there's an option to import the library. So just press enter and it will import it for you. Okay, so for the decode, let's highlight this one and see the details. So you need the string. Put this string here into the decode method. Okay, so what the decode method returns is a dynamic object. So let's put a dynamic here. So because this is a JSON file, and you know that it's like a map variable or a function called map, and you need to specify how it is mapped. So the map works like this. So you have your let's put a variable here first, mapped messages. Okay, equals JSON. Okay, so the map here means that you have a string as your descriptor, and then you have a dynamic object as the value of that descriptor. Much like this one, you have the descriptor here, or title, or you have the descriptor here, and then you have the value here. And so that is what we're trying to get from the JSON.decode function. So it's better to always use a statically typed variable instead of just put in var or dynamic. Okay to use it, but I highly discourage, because later on you will find that you might be confused, or you will have sometime that you will have an error when you use a dynamic type. So let's print that out. Map messages. Copy this one. Okay, dollar. Let's clear this. Then tap Thanos. Okay. So you will see that message detail here is the same because this is, still the first one. And now we have something here that is like a compressed text. However, in reality, this is now an object, okay, a JSON object that you can parse and use for your regular programming. So to use the JSON, you will do it like this. Okay, let's use map messages again, and then use brackets, and then the name of the field. So in this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see. So if you are using the string literal and you have multiple keywords here, just like this one, you need to enclose it in curly braces. But if you only have a single function here, then you don't need the curly braces. So you see that, let's remove this one so that it will not be very confusing. And even this one. Okay, save it, reload. Let's clear this up. Let's enlarge this one. Okay, so now you see that we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 label here, or descriptor, and then it just printed out the object or the value of the object here. But if you put something that doesn't exist for this, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 null, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doesn't exist here. Okay, there's no object called 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. All right, so let's return it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, this converts it to an object, and you can see the values of that object here. So let's say we want to see the message, okay, and then it will return just the array of messages here. So this is message 1, message 2, and then message 3. Okay, so I hope that is clear on how JSON files are used. Okay, so for now, let's just print the value of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we just want to prove that this is working for, very simple JSON objects. And you can also see that the reason why I'm saying it's a simple JSON object is that it's nested up to 3 levels only. Otherwise, you will end up with a ton of objects here, and you don't want to really do that because that will be very error prone. All right, so we learned how to map the JSON file or the JSON object. Okay, so now let's edit chat view and add a method for iterating the messages using the for each method from the map variable. Okay, so a map means that you have objects that has a title and a value, right? So there's a method, inside Dart that allows you to iterate each object inside the map variable. So let's see it here. Let's say mapped is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 messages. So we know that the messages here is an array. So we're going to use the list because this is an array. Okay, so you just need to tell what kind of array this is, what type of data it has. So for us, or for this particular use, it's again a map of string with a string and then dynamic. Okay, then messages. Okay, so now we will have all the messages in a list. If you want, you can also print this list. Let's just use this one so we don't have to type again messages. Okay, asking for a dynamic here since map messages just returns dynamic. Also, I guess we have an error here, so we need to have to stop. Okay, whenever Flutter has this quirk that when you see this reload already in progress, most of the time it will not really reload at times. There's just certain events, not always, but it happens, so it's good to know. So you just have to stop and then start it again. And also, if you edit your JSON files or your asset files, okay, it will not reload it when you save it. So you need to stop and then edit and stop debugging, edit your file or your asset file, and then debug, run it again. So let's wait. All right, so there you have the installing and syncing. All right, so let's tap one friend. Okay, so we see the list here. Okay, so it's an array of objects. So what do we do with this one? Just dot for each. Okay, and then you have, if you highlight this, you will have a dynamic value. So let's just say underscore value denotes private variable. So let's print it out. Print, and use either. Okay, so you can use either a double quotation mark or a quotation mark or a single quote or apostrophe. Okay, so let's say value is dollar underscore value. Save that one. So now we see that it made 3 lines saying value is and then the contents of that variable or this value here. Okay, so this is where we can put our functions for displaying this into widgets. So you can either or turn this function to a list, right? List of dynamic. However, you need to have future here, okay? And then you'll just return messages. So if you want to use this function now, all you have to do is use this for each loop here in your function, okay? Because this one just returns the list, so it doesn't do anything, just returning the list. Okay, so it's better sometimes to do this because sometimes you have to use the same list or same variable or result in another function, so you don't really want to build separate functions with the same process or methods here. All right, okay, so let's go back slides. So let's put this into text widgets, especially in the chat view. Let's find that. So here, let me compress this, condense, whatever. Okay, so here we see that we're trying to make a list view, which is a scrollable view. And inside it, of course, since it is a scrollable list view, you will need children. That means a couple or a list of widgets, okay? So it's a multiple widget, parent widget. And so from here, what we can do, okay, is let's make a new function, a list of widgets, or get messages, okay? So let's use this function here, okay? Load message details dot, then use value, then put the function here for the methods. So make sure that your value is not null. That's always a good practice. So if it's null, let's just return a single container, okay? But however, we need to add it here. Let's make a temporary list of widgets, temp list. So it's a good practice to set a temporary or an initial value, which is a null list here, or to any value or any variable that you will have. Most likely you would need an initial value. Let's return temp list. So the reason why you really want to have an initial value here is that when you return nothing, or when you return, when something happens or some error happens, you will not return null, okay? Because nulls, especially in widgets, they will create the red screen of death in Flutter. So let me try to show you that one. So instead of a widget here or a list here, let's put that. So you see there are no errors here. So let's save and then remove the initial value. So you see there's the red screen of death in Flutter, and you don't really want to have that show up. So initialize your variables or your states, although this is not really a state but a variable. But anyway, back to the topic, okay? So if it's not null, do something else. Let's add a container dot add, okay? Or maybe not a container. Let's add text widget that says no messages found. So let's put this here first. Let's see what happens. All right, it didn't show. So what happened? So since this is a non-future or non-asynchronous, so what happened is that it evaluated the text or the widget here after it has redrawn the UI, okay? So this is where async and await really comes into play. So this is what happens when you have a function, that produces a value at a delayed date or delayed time after the UI has refreshed or has repainted or redrawn. And so, Flutter didn't wait for it to finish, but it just did it. We can see that it is activated when we set our breakpoint here, and then let's press play or continue. So it didn't show up. However, if we move this up here and then save it, let's see an error. So there's another error. So we have to stop and start again. All right, press continue. Okay, so now we see that there is a text, although it's on the top. Form is not important as of now. We'll later on. Okay, so you can see that it added the text widget when it's directly here underneath, but when we used it on the future value, it didn't update it in time. So how do we deal with this? So there is a new function or a class that we want to use, and it's called the future builder. So what the future builder does is that it takes a future object or a future value and uses it to build the widget itself. Okay, so it waits until the future value is evaluated and then it produces the correct widget. So with that said, we will have to, number one, replace the list view here with future builder. So let's do that. Sweet. Okay, there you are. Okay, so a future builder, of course, it needs a future. Okay, so this is the value that you're waiting for. And then you also have the builder. Okay, so the builder needs a build context. Let's name it context. And let's see what the other one is, async snapshot. Okay, so we don't have the future here yet. So let's use this future here. Okay, load message details. And then from here, what the builder is that, you know, it's like your build function here, but instead it's called builder here. I don't know, maybe it's just to make us not confused. Okay, however, it also performs processes or functions underneath. So let's do it here. So let's return, you know, the final widget that we need. Turn a list view, but for first we need to make sure that the snapshot is not empty, because sometimes the snapshot can be empty if there's no value returned or there was an error. Snapshot dot connection state. Okay, if the connection state is active or done, so we do this, else. Okay, let's return a circular progress indicator. So now that we're sure that the connection state is done, we also need to make sure that the snapshot has data. Okay, snapshot has data. So otherwise, if you doesn't have any data, centered widget with the text widget as its child. Okay, no data found, no messages found. All right, so now we can see that there is an error here because in this process here, or method or function, you know, we didn't return anything. So let's try to return one. Okay, so this is where we return the list view, although we still don't have the children for it. Okay, so let's make some temporary, you know, children, in particular the chat messages. So now snapshot dot data. Okay, let's make dynamic here, or list dynamic message widgets. Let's call this widgets. Messages list equal to snapshot data, and then we put here 345, and then the messages here, messages. Okay, and then iterate through that list for each message. So children here as chat message widgets. Format and save. And each message, let's print it out for now. Underscore message, dollar underscore message. Need to reload or stop and start. So build-in, installing, and syncing. Tap panels. We still have an error because of type where we went wrong. Okay, so here I think the problem is that we're already returning the messages. Okay, and we still make it as such. Okay, so we need to stop again, start. All right, so it's built and syncing again. Let's tap Thanos. Let's see. All right, so we don't have the error anymore, but we don't see the chat heads or the chat messages. So you can see here too that it has iterated through all the messages. So let's make the chat heads for that one. Chat message widgets dot add. Okay, that message. So we need its friend. Let's put true first. Okay, let's fill up the widget first. So message, and then we need to put the content. Okay, so message content. Friends initial. Let's make this a static first for now. So we need to stop it again. Some error when it comes to handling future values inside the widget tree. That's why it gets a lot of these errors. So, but for regular widgets, it doesn't happen that this much. It happens sometimes, but not as much as this one when we have the future object. All right. So you see now that we have 4 chat messages, although they all look the same, but we got the messages. Hey, what's up? Did you see this picture yet? Which are the messages that we have here, right? Okay, so it's just a matter of sorting them or filtering them afterwards. But at least now we have common or the basics of handling future values. Okay, all right. You can also make this is not previous false. Let's see, turn this first. Okay, so we can make this show that it's not a previous message, or when we say that this is true, it will show the avatar. Now what we can do is count the length of snapshot.data, and we can also have a counter, just like a normal for I loop. Okay, so int text 0. Oh, okay, so we don't have the length. Should use chat messages not length equal to not that index. Let's try that. So we need to add value. So we forgot to increment the index. Okay, so we now have only one chat message that has the avatar, which is most like other social media chat apps. Just need to format it in a way that the text are aligned from each vertically. So we'll do that next time. So that's it for this video. So it took more time than I should have done, but don't worry, the next videos will be shorter because now we have the fundamentals. We are building up on the fundamentals, so we don't need to describe or discuss it again.